Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode and we're going to discuss about the present vaccine issues and the vaccine related things, and most importantly what's going on around the world. We will learn from our expert. We have our Professor Donalds. Other panelists, they are joining today. So let's start with Professor Donald. So how are you, and what do you want to share about the vaccine and vaccine policy?
Well, it's it'd be interesting to find out what questions that you have about it, because it's a broad subject, and the it's working out differently in different parts of the world. And a lot of times when we're on the show, we're very United States centric, and I think that it's one of the bigger issues is how it works out for the larger, broader world, especially in the places where your audience is. In the United States, the vaccine rollout has been slow, and not that many people have gotten it yet. So, but one of the issues has been that globally is that it needs to be distributed equitably. The United States, we just fortunately got rid of the worst president we've ever had in history. And he was very, let's put it this way, he tried to make sure that the vaccine was available for the people in the United States, and therefore he denied it to other people in the world. And people all over the world would like to get the vaccine too. In England, they've been a lot more worried about equity, being equitable. So they looked at their vaccine and made an attempt to make sure that that was available everywhere in the world. Whereas Trump was trying to make sure that Americans would get vaccinated first. And of course, that's always a problem because there isn't enough money. Some of the countries, poorer countries, don't have enough money necessarily to pay outrageous prices for the vaccine that could potentially be charged. And so I think overall, that's one of the interesting issues is how the vaccine is being made available to the developed world or developing world. And so that's one of the main things that I think it'd be nice if we had other panelists that we could talk about a little bit, but that's one of the main issues of it. It's not available to me. I can't get it. And it might be quite a while before I can, because even in the United States, the distribution of it went very bad. It just didn't get distributed like it should have. And so everyone's waiting for quite a while. And it'd be interesting to hear what your concerns are about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just want to know, at present in USA, vaccine already started, and we get few of the news those who take vaccine after a few days, even some frontliner, they get they are COVID positive. So actually, what's going on? Even we know that your family members, they are engaged with vaccine and this kind of things. So what do you want to share about the real situations in USA?
No, I don't know what you're saying, because the vaccine's pretty effective. So if vaccines take a little bit of time to work. So when you get a vaccine, your immune system has to respond to the vaccine, and then based on responding to the vaccine, it creates antibodies, and the antibodies protect you. However, it doesn't happen instantly. Like if you get the shot of the vaccine, then it doesn't mean that you're protected the next day. And one common thing with vaccines is that somebody will get the vaccine but they're already sick or already about to get sick. And so, for an instance, a lot of people I know, or several people I know, won't get flu shots because they believe that when they got a flu shot, they got the flu. But since flu is, at the time they're getting the flu shot, flu is probably circulating widely in the community. That's just a coincidence. They got the flu shot and they also got the flu at the same time, or approximately at the same time. And so they get sick with the flu and they think that that's because of the flu shot, but it's just simply the flu shot hasn't protected them yet. And it's the same with COVID. If somebody gets COVID and gets a COVID shot at the same time, they'll still get COVID because the vaccine hasn't taken effect yet. And it's been so soon. They're actually, I don't know, besides the people that were in the trials, I don't think there's anybody in the United States that's really completely protected by the vaccine yet, because it takes 2 shots. And people like my wife is a frontline healthcare worker, and she got the first shot, but she hasn't got her second shot. So she's not protected yet from COVID, from the shots. So it would, to say that somebody got the shot and the shot had some reason, some influence on whether they got COVID or not, it's premature. We have to wait for weeks before we would even be able to tell. Hi.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you. We have Dr. Nikhil Agarwal from IIT Kanpur. So hello, sir. How are you? Here is Professor Donalds from California. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, I apologize for 10 minutes delay because there was some unprecedented rain in New Delhi, and somehow the Delhi roads are not equipped for handling rains. So there was a bit of traffic jam. So unfortunately, I got stuck up. Apologies.
Having a traffic jam in Delhi, I gather, not that unusual.
Okay. Sir, like you are expert researcher, sir, and you are scientist. Hello, Mr. Kiran. So from our side, we just discussing about this COVID-19 vaccine and this kind of thing. So you are in Pune, Kanpur. So what do you want to share about these points of vaccine production, vaccine related, supply chain related issues? Many news we are actually observing from newspaper. So what's going on inside India, especially in the manufacturing industry?
So India may not be the leading research country, but certainly we know that how to produce. And you would be very surprised to know India is the largest vaccine producer in the world, not only for COVID vaccine, but for other generic medicines also. There are a number of companies which have been doing the generics and the vaccine for various, whether it's flu vaccine or pneumonia vaccine or other vaccines have been produced. They are they are researched and I would say formulated in Switzerland, in Canada, in United States or UK or other places, but manufactured in India. So there is an ecosystem that exists uh, of very large scale manufacturing of vaccine. So we are little lucky. And the another benefit is that because there is an ecosystem that exists, so we are able to get access to vaccine relatively early than most of the developing world. So there are 2 vaccine candidates which have been approved by the Indian authority. One is AstraZeneca, which is Oxford AstraZeneca. So 100 million dosage is already being produced. Another 100 million doses are on the way. There is another indigenously developed vaccine which is called Bharat Biotech COVID Shield. That's another one. uh, which they are manufacturing approximately 80 million dosage per month. But certainly, India being a country of 1.3 billion people, minimum 50%
Mhm.
people need to be inoculated before we were able to see impact. The challenge that we are facing, and like any other developing country, and I'm sure United States, it is not less. It must be equally challenging. Is to how to reach out to the people who are in need, how to identify them, how to reach out to them, because in villages, in towns, in places where there are millions of people living, it is absolutely impossible to get very quick access to the vaccine. And the beauty of this vaccine, I would say, I don't know whether what word to use, whether we call it a beauty of this vaccine or whatnot, is that you require two shots. If you miss a vaccine shot by a week or two, which is most likely you will do in developing country like India because of the access, or because of lack of knowledge, or because you are traveling or you are out of work or something, then what will happen? So the process of vaccination and logistics extremely complicated. You need a 28 days window where you need a second shot. So you need to be absolutely on your toes to safeguard yourself, as well as be available at the vaccine shot for the second one. My worry is that more than the logistics, what will happen during the second shot, whether the people will be able to present themselves or not, because there are different discourses in the public domain which are floating. If, God forbid, if there is no adverse events happening, there is no uh, everything goes fine, then chances are that people will turn up for the second shot. And also, the last point I want to make is, in India, like majority of the countries, they have made the vaccine voluntary.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you, thank you. We have Dr. William. So, how are you today?
Good. How is everybody this evening? Morning,
Yes,
afternoon.
yes. We have our professor from IIT Kanpur,
Uh-huh.
and he has all of the expertise and knowledge about what's going on inside the vaccine industry. But we want to know more about U.S. situation. What do you want to share with us?
Okay. Well, with regard to the United States, well, I have actually had 2 points on this. But first, I'll begin with the United States. The United States, obviously, we're in the process of distributing vaccines, and they mostly are dealing with the Pfizer uh, uh,
Mhm.
vaccination to begin with. We are obviously, just as Doctor uh, uh, Arga Argawal. All right.
Nikhil Agarwal.
Nikolai Agarwal.
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for butchering your name. Just as he explained, it is
Just call him Nick. Like I can call you Bill, you can call me Nick.
yes. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay.
This is good. Yeah.
We are running into logistics, and in the United States, there are. First of all, there are not enough vaccine doses available now to begin widespread inoculation. So we, like the rest of the nations on the globe, are doing it in a phased scenario. The most vulnerable first, followed by the first line workers, then those over the age of 65. Um, and then we will then be moving into the general population. Now, of course, that's governed by each and every individual state. So the federal government has acquired the doses, and then the companies, through private means, have pre-positioned them and sent them out. But it's left up to each individual state. So the precise order of distribution of the vaccinations to the targeted groups will vary depending on which states decide which populations are most in need in their particular states. That notwithstanding, there has been just this issue with regard to the logistics and the rollout, because it's just the first time through. And some would say we're still working out the kinks in the situation. Others would say it's a matter of poor planning on behalf of the current administration. Nevertheless, when the new administration takes office, they are pledging through that they're going to have a much more renewed emphasis. However, at the end of the day, even if you get the logistical supply lines in order, it will not make up for the fact that there is currently a dearth or a shortage of total vaccines. as Dr. Nick just mentioned, that all of the doses, regardless whether you've got Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca, Oxford, takes 2 doses. I'm leaving out of for the time being, because I know less about this, the 2 vaccines, the one from Russia and the one from China. And I mean no disservice either to the Russian vaccine or the Chinese vaccine. I'm just leaving them out for now because I'm on less secure footing when talking about those vaccines. But with regard to the 3 that we are popularly know of, Pfizer, Moderna, and the Oxford vaccine, they are in various stages of productivity. Now, that having been said, with the United States, currently the United States has only ordered about 100 million or 200 million, which is not nearly enough to cover the United States. Europe is finding itself in this similar kind of shortage of order, and that also comes from the fact that the companies just can't produce them fast enough. So, because they are themselves facing logistical supply line challenges with getting the materials they need to make the vaccines. So it's going to be a bit of a work in progress. Now, that having been said, I just want to take this quick moment so I can talk about it at a larger level. The major concern that I had going into dealing with this issue as we move forward was how it was affecting the third world or the developing nations. I don't necessarily want to call them a third world. I want to call them either developing nations or those nations that are lower income, meaning that what we've seen so far now with these 3 vaccinations, that with the first 2, there was just a singular grab by those that are of the richer nations and the more developed nations. There was just a grab for the vaccines. And so first they pre-positioned their purchases because they had the money to do so. And then they turned around, and once they realized, or they found that the vaccines were in fact, the efficacies of the vaccines were indeed workable, they then doubled down and they started buying up all of the world's supplies of these various vaccines, leaving those with less resources, that is the less rich nations, at a distinct advantage in this early stage. Now, that necessarily undermines the ability of a comprehensive global attack on this pandemic, because you can't get to anything unless you get world herd immunity. And you can't just have the richest nations are those that can afford it taken care of first, and then everything's great. Well, that might be great for them, but it's not going to start the whole process of getting the world back in order. And so that's a distinct issue that we have to be cognizant of. Now, on that point, what was happening, because and it's a bit of a nuance, and I really don't mean to take up this much time, but it's important, and then I will turn it back over to this august panel. And that is simply this, that with regard to the first 2 vaccines that were approved in order, you had Pfizer and then you had Moderna. Now, I just want our audience to understand the difference between these 2 and then the third one, which is the Oxford vaccine. Now, Pfizer and Moderna, those shots run approximately $20 in the case of Pfizer, or $15 to $25, maybe higher, in the case of Moderna, per dose. So they are actually charging not only so it's a cost plus profit for those 2 vaccines. In contrast, for the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, the cost is $4 per dose. Now, the difference obviously is that with with Pfizer, you need sub-zero chilling ability. That is to keep it viable in sub-freezing conditions in order to make it effective. And the same is true for Moderna, although Moderna does allow for storage at a standard refrigeration for up to 6 months. However, there is no such limitation with the AstraZeneca Oxford dose, which what you then find is it can be stored in a standard refrigerator for 6 months, and at $4 a shot, it is the vaccine that is the one that is essentially market ready to deal with those countries that are resource poor. Now, what we find here is this, and here's an interesting thing. You would think that at this point in time, the world, because I'm really not worried about the developed nations. I'm really not worried about the resource-rich nations, because they're going to figure out a way to get the item done. I think it's a shame that people are profiteering on a vaccine that they know the entire world needs, rather than than showing a bit of humanity. However, that aside, when it comes to, there are still areas where we are seeking to gouge the less rich nations. And this is an important point, and that is this, that the World Bank recently allocated $12 billion for loan guarantees for less rich or resource enabled nations, the poorer nations. And that was on top of $6 billion that they had set aside. Again, these are loans. And so, you're going to the bank and you're taking out a loan. So you as a country are going to the bank, taking out a loan for purposes of obtaining this vaccine. However, the conditions, the details of that loan are that the loans can only be used by these resource poor countries to invest in the highly expensive sub-zero capacity, so that they can only then be fitted to deliver the vaccine, such as Pfizer's vaccine, which is among the most expensive vaccines. And so what we're doing is we are going to these desperate countries that are resource poor. We're offering them loans so they can then turn around and buy high-end refrigerators and freezers to then buy the most expensive vaccines per dose to then give it to their people. That is madness, because it puts the country in debt long term, one. Two, it reduces the number of vaccines that they can afford to cover their populations at the highest possible cost. And at the end of the day, it leaves them with a medical pharmaceutical infrastructure that they won't be using after the world is inoculated. It's crazy. And so when we start talking about this issue with regard to the vaccines, yes, we've got the 3 vaccines and obviously the other 2, which I'm leaving out for reasons I stated before. But more importantly, we still have an infrastructural, systemic, discriminatory world system that is keeping the poorer countries down, and they're the ones most in need. So here we have a vaccine at $4 per dose, and even if you have a markup of $2, that's still $6 per dose. And we're offering loans to third world or resource poor nations for $18 billion, just so that they can then go out and buy the most expensive stuff. It's ridiculous. So what I think we need is, I think that we need to have a refocus. We need to put pressure on the World Health Organization through their COVAX program, which is another program that they are trying to do to get these vaccines down to the developing nations. And essentially on that piece, just another footnote, they have approximately $2 billion to spend when the real need has been identified, even through the World Health Organization, the COVAX unit. The real need is $200 billion, but they only have $2 billion at the time. Now, you've got the World Health Organization, you've got the World Bank, and they're all putting money aside and funneling it into areas that do the least amount of help to the very nations that can't afford it. So, anyway, glad to join you. Looks like
Thank you. Professor Donalds, yeah. What do you want to add? Unmute yourself, please.
I thought it was very interesting from Dr. Nikhil, his point that India has a fabulous infrastructure to be able to make vaccines. When I live in Europe, mostly people get their vaccines from India. In fact, I even buy some of the medicine that I would get here in the United States. There's a place that I can get it emailed or mailed to me, snail mailed to me from Indian companies like Sun, which is one of the biggest pharmaceutical manufacturers in the world, and it's absolutely top quality. I mean, it's as good as any place anywhere in the world. It's and so it seems to me that the barrier here would be a little bit more some of the intellectual property issues and things like that. So in other words, if a company in India wanted to manufacture the vaccine, they're certainly capable of it. And probably their facilities are larger than anything we have in the United States, because it's a bigger country and they serve a lot of places in the world. Russia, for instance, buys a lot of vaccines from India. And as I said, in Europe. So that's something I haven't really looked into, and I've actually wondered about a little bit, is that are the Indian companies allowed to make these vaccines? Do the companies like Moderna and AstraZeneca and Pfizer, do they give the formulas basically to India so that they'll be able to make these? That'd be an interesting thing, because they have the capability of making more than we do. I will say that the Moderna vaccine is also being distributed in the United States pretty much to the degree of Pfizer. There's theoretically 100 million doses of each, which have been bought, which is, since they require 2 doses, that's enough to vaccinate 50 million people in a country of 320 million people. So that's 1 out of 6 people right now could possibly get vaccinated. The theory was that there was going to be enough vaccinations by the end of July, but the actual number of people that have been vaccinated now is about 1/3 of what we'd expect them to be. I want to just mention one thing. I don't know if it's a problem in the developing world, but it is a problem in the United States, is that there's people who basically don't understand what vaccines do, and they're afraid of them. Like I've been in the Rotary Club, and we were put in years and years of extreme effort to vaccinate people for polio. And we went around the world, and polio was almost eliminated. It's almost been eliminated, but in some countries in Africa, the leader of the country got up and he said, well, the polio vaccine is actually going to make you impotent. So if you get the polio vaccine, you'll never be able to have children. And because of that, people were terrified of getting the polio vaccine, and certain areas of the world, we just made it impossible to vaccinate enough people. Now, the same kind of thing is going around about the COVID vaccine in the United States. There's people who believe that since Bill Gates actually proactively funded some some manufacturing facilities, he actually got together with some other funding sources, and they basically did a scattershot thing where they built manufacturing facilities for each of the vaccines that were about to be developed or in the process of being developed, so that whichever one actually worked, they'd already have a manufacturing facility for them. And a huge number of people in the United States get all of their information from social media, and especially certain types of social media. Like there's this website called Parler, and there was basically groups on Reddit, and they believe these conspiracy theories that Bill Gates put into the vaccine microchips so that he could trace everybody and control them in some sort of a way. And sadly, there's a disturbing number of people in the United States that believe things like that. And I'm sure that it's something that might be happening throughout the world, unfortunately. So I think that's one of the big barriers. Another thing about this vaccine is, I was starting to say a little bit about how vaccines work, is that what they do is they introduce a protein into your body. Your body sees that protein and starts manufacturing antibodies for it. That protein was specially designed to have a strand of RNA, genetic material from the virus. Then when you get the virus, your immune system sees the virus, and since it has the same protein as the one that your body's already developed antibodies for, your body attacks the virus and clears it out for you, hopefully. And that's the way that it works. And one of the things that happens is, oftentimes when people get the second dose of this, they do have a reaction for about a day or a day and a half, where they kind of get a mild case of COVID. And it feels like a mild case of COVID, because part of what makes you sick when you get a virus is your body's own immune system fighting against the virus. So that's what, so for instance, when you have the flu and you feel really sick, one of the reasons you feel really sick is because your body is fighting the flu virus, and it causes inflammation and throws you completely off. And so the COVID virus also, the COVID vaccine also has a huge number of people that get side effects. So when they get it, the second dose, they get sick. And I can imagine, we don't really know yet because most people aren't getting the second dose, just the people that have been in the trials. Literally, it's been so new in the United States. People have gotten their first dose, but they haven't gotten their second dose. And so that's something that remains to be seen. As far as, again, back to the whole thing of the developing world, fortunately, there's places like India that are completely capable of making the vaccine on a very, very large scale. And as long as it's not prevented by intellectual property laws, I'm confident that India will be able to scale up. And there's one day in India, in the polio thing, where the Rotary Club got together with people in India and they organized a vaccination day and they vaccinated, catch this, 150 million people in one day. So India is absolutely capable of being able to do this, and I'd like to be. I hope they're working with other countries to help distribute it to them too. But they also have the capability of doing that as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there.
Thank you. Dr. Nikhil, you are sharing some information about Serum Institute, and I think that they are producing vaccine. And beside that, one important question in my mind, from the newspaper and everywhere, we are observing that India will produce vaccine, as well as I understand that they have a huge amount of population and they have to provide vaccine to their populations. And it's more, I think 1.3 billion people India has, or 1.35 billion billions. Anyway, my question is that, is there any things that India, example in South Asia, even South Asia, they have dependency, many countries have dependency on India, and now vaccine is a major issues. Like India will fulfill their requirement, their 1.3 billion people requirement first, then they will export their vaccine to country like India or Sri Lanka or Nepal or this kind of country, or what the real strategy India has. And we get too much of news and too much of confusions. Yeah.
So I will, first of all, certainly to respond to what Professor Donald was saying, India has received approval for AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine that is manufactured by Serum Institute. Serum Institute is the leading manufacturer of vaccine in the world. In fact, they claim that they are number one. 65% of the children vaccine, which is done in the whole world, is done by this company. They are huge. And by huge does not mean only in terms of money, but in terms of ability to produce quality vaccine continuously. That's something which we need. Imagine that today, even we do half of the world population for inoculation, and please remember that vaccine is not a one-time process. COVID and COVID mutations are emerging. There is a UK strain, there is a South African strain, there is a Nigerian strain. And like a flu vaccine or like a paracetamol, you take it for a fever, you may have to take it every 6 months. You may have to take it every 1 year. You may have to take it every 2 years. We don't know. Because vaccine may have an effect on a human body anything between 6 months to, 15 days to 6 months. It is entirely possible that after taking 2 shots successfully, maybe within fortnight you get a COVID. So there are few things. Anybody who particularly who are listening to us, they should not become a superhero by saying that I got a vaccine and now I can fly like a Superman. That's not going to happen. So you need to be extraordinarily careful. Third thing is that regarding the so it's a vaccine is a very new business. So it is also quite difficult business, and there is certainly all the countries which are manufacturing the vaccine or approving the vaccine, whether it's United States or United Kingdom, certainly they have started announcement that they will start donating the vaccine to the less income countries. However, they will fulfill their requirement first. So I believe that there is, from a business perspective, for these pharma companies who have put in billions of dollars in this, they would be very keen to export the vaccine to other countries, and of course not just to earn the money, but also to provide their social service. So today in India, all the vaccine they have announced will be free, but I have a serious doubt that this will be a repeated feature. Maybe the first shot or the first time, two shots will be free, but if you want to get another shot after 6 months time, then you have to pay for it. So uh, the vaccine is here to stay. The corona is here to stay, is not going to go away, like the even the SARS virus or mars virus. So COVID is just, coronavirus is just another type mutation, uh, which in common people call it flu, and it's a more serious mutation. These mutations will emerge, and there may be a possibility, like the way many of us get the flu jabs in every season, and that is valid almost for a year. You have to get, there may be a possibility, I'm not sure, maybe a year to time, there may be a singular flu jab which also provide help for your COVID. So, but you have to get it every year. So every year, government is not going to give you free. It will be purchased, and it may become volunteers. Today also it is volunteer. So that is politics behind the vaccine, and also the business behind the vaccine. We need to be. It's a another research subject, that how the health technology, health policy is taking shape, and it's a very interesting observations, not only for the scientists but also for the social scientists.
Thank you, sir. Sir, as well as I want to know specifically, like India will cover their 1.3 billion people first, then they will provide the vaccine, like export vaccine to other countries. What's going on? Actually, there are
I'll give
many
you a parallel
confusions.
to it. I will maybe there is no such announcement as of now, but I'll give you a story, and that story is not old story; it's a very new story. In March, when the first time in India we have gone for the lockdown was on 22nd of March. At that time, one mask of, that is right in my drawers, these kind of N95 mask, which were available for almost $10, 10 US dollar in India.
Wow.
Imagine. And
Yeah.
you have to actually need to know somebody. You need to be an influential person to get few masks for your family, because they were not available. The PPE kits, they were practically like, it was a black market for PPE kits.
Right.
They were not the PPE kits.
Right.
Within 9 months' time, we are the largest producer of N90 mask in the world. 80% of the requirements are now being exported. We are the second largest producer of PPE kits in the world after China. So within 9 months, that is a 9 months period that has dramatically changed everything from black marketing the PPE kit. Today, the PPE kits are available for $3 each. And you can just buy it. Like, you want 1,000 pieces, you want 1 million pieces, they will give it to you overnight. Yes,
Okay,
Bill,
thank
you have
you.
a question.
Yes, I understand. Thank you. We have our new guest, Dr. William. I'm coming. Tracy. Yes, she is actually frontliner from USA. She is a nurse, and we want to know some practical experience from her. Yes, hello. Can you please introduce yourself with our audience and speakers? We have Professor Donald, Professor Agarwals, and we have Dr. Williams. And she is a Tracy. She is a frontliner. She will share her experience with us. Yes.
Hello and good morning. I'm Tracy. I'm a nurse, a critical care nurse, travel nurse. I work out of Colorado, but I've been all over the United States. I started with COVID in Brooklyn at Maimonides when New York City was in the thick of it. And I feel like I've kind of went every hot spot. I might have missed a few, but in Santa Fe right now. And glad to see the vaccine starting. It's slow, but it's spreading everywhere here. And, you know, It's frustrating. I know you guys are seeing the same thing. I have family members, 2 family members in the same room, and another one down the hall, and we're slowly seeing the vaccine start. Some of my coworkers, I haven't gotten it yet. It hasn't been offered to travelers at my hospital yet here in Santa Fe, but I'm hoping in the next few weeks I'll get the first dose of one of them.
Okay, thank you. Dr. William, yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Let me just make a note. I did want to follow up on what Dr. Nicole was talking about. I mean, obviously, there are in the early stages the price gouging when it comes to the scarcity, whether it's PPEs or the vaccines. The thing I just wanted to kind of point out is that on the one hand, the pharmaceutical companies are in. Well, they certainly are looking to recoup their investment dollars. But of the 3 that I'm familiar with, that is the Pfizer, the Moderna, and the AstraZeneca Oxford, only Pfizer self-funded their research. That is to say, they didn't have public dollars whatsoever. But both Moderna and AstraZeneca Oxford were completely paid for by public dollars. And so it seems to me, and this is just a larger appeal to our audience and the world policymakers, it seems to me that if the world funded the development of the vaccines, that they should not at least be allowed to be in a position, at least morally now, to claim that they've got to recoup some sort of investment cost because they didn't invest anything. And rather, I mean, well, to the extent that they had the expertise and the people, but the public investment, that investment was paid for by public dollars from across the globe. And so therefore, more akin to the model that AstraZeneca and Oxford is doing, there should not be a premium price attached to the basic cost of the actual vaccine. So that and so I find that a little troubling, and I think it's something that policymakers around the world should look at. And I understand that there was a frenzy during these past, say, 60 days around the globe to get the vaccine, see if they were working and viable, and their effectiveness rate, and how many doses, and where do they go first, and all that stuff is done. But just as India's production experience has been, that when the N95 masks went from a black market of $10 each to now an export where you can freely get them along with PPEs, which was the same experience we had here domestically in the United States. The same curve line should be followed with regard to all of these other things. The exception, of course, being Pfizer, and that's entirely up to whatever their private morals and goals are in terms of what they want to do with cost plus. However, what we are looking at, and I do want to highlight this, is that we are looking still at a worldwide pandemic, and it is still a race. Now it's a race to get everybody vaccinated. Because as Dr. Nicol pointed out, it's that we have all these new strains coming. And we still don't know whether or not this is a 6-month effective vaccine, whether it's a 1-year effective vaccine. We don't know how long it's going to go. While they say that they have initial confidence in these initial vaccines, all 3 of them, that they can adapt and protect you against these new strains coming out of Africa and other places. We really don't know that yet in any way, shape, or form. And in that regard, we've got billions of people to inoculate. We can't have price gouging at the front end, particularly when public dollars paid for everything. And the emphasis should really be on emergency logistical delivery. And I'm glad that India has, and that's because Oxford and AstraZeneca placed forward operating bases. When they were planning and developing their vaccine, they were also building the production capabilities in India at the same time. And that's not true with Pfizer, and that was not true with Moderna. But it just seems to me that we are in a desperate race because we have these other strains on the horizon. We've got to first get a first inoculation wave throughout the population. Then we can begin to deal with the alternative strains. But by no means can we just relax and say, well, we have a vaccine, and can we by no means have richer countries squat on the vaccines that are out there? And by no means can we have the World Bank or the World Health Organization price gouging, particularly for lesser enriched nations who don't have the resources, by forcing them into untenable loans that they will never pay back for infrastructure that they won't need in the future. That is simply, my concern and deep felt grievance at this point, because I don't know how we can play dice and roll dice with people with worldwide health at this point. We can figure out things at a later point in time, but right now, when we know that the cost of the Oxford AstraZeneca dose, it's $4 a dose versus $35 on average for Pfizer or Moderna. That's crazy. Don't mind me. I'm sorry, Dr.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. Thank you, thank you. We have our friends, Mr. Alex. Yes, what do you want to add regarding vaccine and vaccine-related policy? What should we do? What's your experience? You are an activist.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So I want to mention I'm in my car because I have bad internet where I live, so bear with this. So thanks again, Tracy, for joining us this morning, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing on the front lines. We're happy that you're here on the show with us. So I want to give a little bit about my background. So I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. I have taken all the basic Red Cross courses. I've taken the EMT course, but I've also done a lot of disaster relief work over the last 2 decades. So I've covered hurricanes, forest fires, but I also closely followed pandemics. I took a course in my community college. It was called Nuclear, Chemical, Biological First Responder, and it was broken up into 3 sections. The last section was biological first responder. So we learned about viruses and pandemics, epidemics, and all of that. So one of the things that the professor continued to put in our head the whole time throughout the whole series of information and all the books was, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, a pandemic, it's a matter of when. And they constantly told us, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So it was, I think I took that class around 2008, 2009. So I studied disaster relief and response. It wasn't until I started seeing the cases of Ebola emerge in West Africa that I started really paying attention. And I tried to tell everyone that I knew through social media and called everyone like, hey, this is a potential pandemic. This is, it's spreading at an exponential rate. It's starting to, it's killing people at like a 50% rate. And I couldn't believe how many people just didn't take it seriously in the beginning. So I raised some money and I actually went to West Africa. I went to Ghana. By myself with a lot of supplies and equipment. And I couldn't believe that even like when I was on my way or actually in Ghana was finally when like President Obama said, okay, yeah, it's like a risk. So I was way ahead of the curve with that. I did have the opportunity to meet with the United Nations, the World Health Organization. There was branches of the CDC and the Doctors Without Borders. They were at this major staging area and they were flying equipment and supplies into Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. So I heard from all of these major aid organizations how they're responding. And so one of the biggest challenges they had was misinformation. And it's what we're still dealing with, like misinformation. It's just like setting us back. It set us back with climate change, with adapting or adjusting or solving climate change. It set us back. Like there's so many people that don't even believe in pollution. And unfortunately, there's people that don't even think the earth is round. I mean, we have this misinformation that's causing so much societal damage. So while I'm in Ghana, working with all these professionals and all these people are concerned and all these people are dying, and it's starting to jump countries because I was there for a month and a half. Then there's people on my news feed, my Facebook feed or whatever, telling me that it's not real and it's fake and it's a hoax. And it's just disgusting that this is where our society is. When people are suffering and dying, this misinformation spreading, but it puts people at risk because there was actually Red Cross members that were killed by machetes by people in West Africa because they didn't believe that it was real. So that information, so people in America saying that it's not real through the worldwide internet, social media, has the ability to reach people in these developing countries, and it puts the first responders at risk. So now the people that are saying that this pandemic isn't real obviously has led to somehow Trump and the Trump administration misdirecting people, and then people being skeptical of the vaccinations. So again, misinformation, we're seeing it around the world and how it's slowing down our potential progress towards global sustainability and to saving lives. So I don't usually mention documentaries, but I would really, really, really recommend watching the documentary Social Dilemma. It just basically breaks down how algorithms and social media algorithms shows you exactly what you want to see. So if I click on a couple flat earth videos or links, it's going to continue to show me a lot of supportive information that the Earth's flat. That's exactly how YouTube works, and maybe how Google works. So I do want to mention sometimes face masks are not. So first, everybody thought face masks were to protect themselves, and then with the filtration and everything. But then they realized that other people have to wear face masks to protect the other person. So we found that out. But now there's even new information, and I just want to make sure everyone knows this, that there's and if I'm wrong, Tracy can please correct me. So there's viral load, and viral load is how much of the inoculum level, or how much of the virus actually has to enter your body. So it depends on how sick you're going to get. So actually, when you're wearing a face mask, N95 or N99 has the ability to filter some of the pathogens, so then your viral load is getting smaller. So if you do get COVID, you're actually going to experience less severe symptoms. So I do want to mention that Ebola was a major epidemic, and it started traveling around the world, and it was really serious. We also had Zika and swine flu. So those are some major ones that I remember. And yeah, the new strains coming up, that was predicted. I mean, even in it was like February, I was doing Facebook posts that this was going to change. It was going to change into new strains. Sometimes, and again, Tracy could correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes strains become less severe, but from what I remember, they usually become more severe, because it's like the survival of the fittest, and the best strain that's best at killing people is the one that ends up doing a lot better. So we will continue to see new strains, and unfortunately, we're going to continue to see new epidemics and pandemics around the world, especially with the melting permafrost in the Arctic regions, because I'm not going to go into that. Okay, so there's one more thing. So adverse effects. Of course, there's going to be the situation or the YouTube video where someone was sick, or someone was injured or died. So sometimes those are like factoids. People are using that one time or that one incident to discourage people from taking the vaccine. But again, this is based off percentage. So right now, a high percentage of people are dying from COVID, and a very small percentage from all of my recent research are being affected by the vaccinations. And again, you do have to take both doses, I think, for it to be completely effective. So the one news article that went viral where some doctor got sick, he only took the first dose, so it wasn't even complete. That's not effective. You got to take the first dose, and X weeks later you take the second dose, and that's where it has the full strength against the virus. So those are some of the things I want to add into this conversation. Thank you.
Okay, Tracy,
back to the panel.
Your thoughts? Actually, I have a question for you, and that is, I would have thought that traveling nurses would have been in the first round of groups that it was administered to. I mean, that was my understanding. Can you tell us more about that then?
Yeah, I would have thought that we would be among the first round also, and I don't think we're being left out yet. Basically, my hospital got an email, all the staff got an email saying, if you'd like the vaccine, we have some doses coming, meet at this place and time. And I didn't get the email. So I contacted my manager, and she said, yes, we don't have clarification yet on when the travelers are brought in. So I actually work for a different company who places me with this job, and I'm just contracted with the hospital. So I called my travel company, and they aren't getting doses sent to them, because they're, they just manage us. So they referred me back to the hospital. And so I'm kind of in negotiation saying, hey, you want me to get it? The big thing they're waiting on now is if they get approval to let me and the other travelers have it. We need to still be at that hospital in 21 days to get the second dose. And I'm contracted at this hospital till February 6th. So I would be in that group. I'm hoping to hear this week whether that goes ahead. And it's just a difference between shipping doses to the travel company compared to shipping to the hospital, it seems.
Okay, and let me ask you about that, because your voice really is, well, you're going to speak to explain a lot for a number of people, traveling nurses across the country. Does it make a difference that currently you're in Arizona versus if you were in, say, for example, the state of California? Do they have a different system in California? because their outbreak is obviously more acute than it is right now.
Right. It seems like everything is different in every state. So I don't currently have any friends working in California that I can call up or message and say, what exactly are you experiencing? I have a friend in Florida and in Texas I've asked about, and they still haven't offered it to the travelers there. California does seem to have more services for nurses in general. So it could happen. I'm hoping to go to California next. I'm currently in New Mexico. So, sparsely populated, no worries. Sparsely populated state, which could be part of the issue of getting enough vaccine for us first, healthcare workers at first.
Okay. And Professor Donald, what do you make of the leaving essentially to the states to decide the priority list for those that are vaccinated?
Well, it's not totally left to the states. If you go to the CDC website, they do have a step-by-step rollout, but the states have been modifying it to some degree. So it wasn't and another thing about it not being entirely left to the states is that the federal government was deciding how much would go to each particular state. So they didn't have any control over how much vaccine they got. They just had the control over what they were going to do when they got the vaccine. So according to Pfizer, one of the biggest problems that they had is that the federal government didn't tell them where to send the stuff. So they had a bunch of it sitting in their warehouses that they didn't know, they got no clue on which states they were supposed to send it to and where they were supposed to send it. In each state, they have different challenges because in a really sparsely populated state like New Mexico, they have the issue that the Pfizer vaccine has to be kept on dry ice, basically. It has to be kept very cold. And getting it from one place to another when there's not that many people at the place gets more expensive and more difficult logistically. But I think in the United States, that's just, I think the federal government would have been better to have it go through the federal government, but the federal government in this particular case said, well, we don't really want to have anything to do with it. And so states like California that spend a lot of effort on health and public services and really try and make it, like where my wife works, the people get as good a care as I do. They get absolutely top quality care, and the people that she serves are basically often poor. They're mostly poor. They're mostly Hispanic or Latino immigrants and many of them don't have health insurance. They don't have anything. But yet in California, we managed to provide them with top quality care. So I think that, I don't know what to say about our system that we have, really.
No, I understand. Alex, and then Sharif, I'm coming to you. Alex, let me just ask you, in your experience, when you went as, pre-Ebola, with all, we just lost Alex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I just want to add Dr. Nikhil, because there are many questions from audience for Dr. Nikhil, and it's due to subject matter. Dr. Nikhil and Tracy, I will ask you questions. And
okay, Dr. Nikhil, I guess one of the first questions is one of the audience had asked whether or not the COVID-19 could be prevented by getting a flu vaccine. What can you tell us about that?
yes,
I don't. So there is prevention is certainly there. Prevention. The first prevention is not about the vaccine. Remember that the first prevention, and Tracy will certainly certify, is the taking the precaution by yourself. You have to wear the mask. You have to sanitize your hand, and you have to maintain the social distances. That's the only way that you can be safeguard against any virus or any contaminated disease. So let me tell you one very, very bad news, that this virus is the first virus of its kind.
Mhm.
More are likely to come. There is not going to be less virus. The world is not going to be the more safer place. The world, particularly as far as the biohazards are concerned, the world will become the more dangerous space in the future. The only way for us to safeguard is that we have to be careful. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our family and friends. And the only way is that we keep the surroundings clean. The vaccine and everything else, whatever you are injecting in your body, ultimately it's your choice. Uh, uh, you If you safeguard yourself, there are examples exist there are countries which have done tremendously well, and they hardly have any cases, be it New Zealand, be it Bhutan, be it like smaller countries, of course, them tremendously well. And in fact, you'll be surprised to know many of the South Asian nations, even in Thailand and Malaysia, the cases have been extremely low compared to what we are seeing in United States or India or Iran or Spain. Is regardless of the geography, is regardless of the weather condition, the cases have been different in all these places. But despite of the weather condition of humid Malaysia, and Sharif can himself tell you more about it, the cases have been very low. What is the reason? The reason is fairly simple, that people have been careful.
Mhm.
Right.
That's
Mhm.
the only thing
True.
which I comes to a mind. There is no other way. There is no other
Exactly.
God. There is no God. There is no doctor. There is nobody saving you. You are saving yourself.
Here people are very disciplined. Yeah, here very disciplined. There are few other questions, like it's a very common question, but I just want to add: can Pfizer vaccine end COVID-19? To Dr. Nikhil Agarwal's, can antibody be collected from patients who have recovered from COVID-19 to make a vaccine? I don't know scientifically. Dr. Nikhil's, yes,
I
it's actually
cannot answer
audience.
this question. Maybe Tracy would, certainly the Pfizer vaccine will not add the COVID virus, but Tracy certainly can answer the next question. Being a frontline worker, can you make another vaccine from the uh, blood cells of the infected or cured people?
Mhm. Yes,
Well, I'm not
Tracy.
a scientist in the lab making vaccines, but we do give convalescent plasma to patients from other patients who have recovered. And it seems to help. Not every patient gets it. It's only if we have it available. So it's usually for our sickest patients, our youngest, healthiest, who would otherwise be our youngest, healthiest patients. So say a 30-year-old. I had a 30-year-old in ICU for a long time, and last I heard, we think he was going to make it, and he got convalescent plasma. And like I said, it seems to help. It does. I haven't seen anybody recover miraculously. It seems to give them a little bump in how they're doing. I haven't seen anything miraculous. We're doing better than we were in the spring. When I was in New York in the spring, there was death everywhere all the time. It was really traumatizing. Now it's still really common, but we know more what we're doing. We know more what we're facing. As we were talking about in the last question, the biggest thing we can do is preventing it getting in us, getting on us. And I like to think of it as almost like a two-tiered thing there, because I've been around this basically in rooms where it's being aerosolized and I'm swimming in it for 10 or 14 hours a day. And the biggest thing I try to think of is I want to keep it off of me, so I wear a mask. I wear two masks, actually. I wear an N95 and then a surgical. I wear special prescription goggles I purchased. I wear a face shield. I wear two hair covers and all my hair, up inside of that, plus, the gown over me. So all of these things manually keep it off of my body, off of my skin. Now, I'm not covered head to toe. I'm exposed, on my neck, some of my arms occasionally, maybe my ankles occasionally. So if it's on me, my next step is I try to wash it off. So I take all that PPE off when I leave the room. And then again, at a different level when I leave the hospital. I, wash it off of me. And then I also think about if some gets inside of me to a certain degree. I mean, I don't think I've avoided every single virus, or the billions I've been around. I drink a lot of hot liquids. If it incubates in the back of your throat for a few days, I don't know how much this helps, but I constantly sip hot liquids, except for the 10 to 12, 14 hours I'm covered up with these things, and then I don't eat or drink much at all. But, so I think of varying levels of defense. And by the time it's in me and colonized and I'm needing medical care, that's way down my line of defense. I've been thinking about it much, much prior to that, of avoiding it.
Okay. Thank you. I think Dr. William, you have a few things with Mr. Alex.
Yeah, well, actually, I wanted to go to Alex first because he was jumping to get in. So,
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm on my phone. I accidentally hit the wrong button. So some things that I wanted to add to this is just to what Tracy was just saying, and to answer the question that can the Pfizer vaccine end the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's not just the, okay, for instance, as cases continue to spread, one of the reasons they do lockdowns is to slow down the drastic increase in new cases and all of the people overwhelming the local and regional hospitals. So when you introduce a vaccine, it's one of the solutions, but the other solutions are still the main solutions that we've been doing the whole time. It's still practicing social distancing. It's still washing our hands. It's still trying to stay at home, and still having the face masks. So the main things that we're doing, we still need to incorporate those things as the vaccines come out, because the vaccines aren't going to solve this whole pandemic. And one of the reasons there's two main reasons, to the best of my knowledge. One main reason is there's just not going to be enough vaccines, or enough people are not going to be vaccinated enough. We're just not going to be able to produce enough fast enough that's going to help slow down the spread to the rate that it's okay, so there's R0 value. So certain viruses spread at a different rate. So the flu, I think, was spreading at R0 value 1.1. So it was just barely going exponential. At one point, this virus was going anywhere from, I think, 2.2 to 2.7. But of course, that depends on what region or what country you live in. So when you practice social distancing, it lowers that R0 value. When you wash your hands, when you follow the basic systems and adapt to the way stores have the lines and all these little things that we're changing with the plexiglass and all of that. So all of those things help reduce cases. So when we do all of those things in a combination and we do those correctly, we don't touch a door handle and then touch the corner of our eye, just simple stuff like that. So those are all helping reduce the R0 value and the rate of spread. So, and since that wasn't working, that's when the government then comes in and they say, okay, no gatherings of 100 people, and then that doesn't work. Okay, no gatherings of 10 people. So all of these different regulations and restrictions are to help save lives, but at the same time, it's to help Tracy in her job, so she has a volume of patients that she can successfully treat, take care of, and just to help save. So when people aren't washing their hands and not wearing face masks and not doing all these things, not staying home, not going out, or they're going out for unnecessary reasons, all of those are spreading the cases exponentially. That's increasing the R0 value, and that's when the hospitals get overrun. And that's what we're seeing in Southern California and different places around the world. And that's one of the reasons why some of the countries solved the pandemic so fast. I think China, when they just locked down everybody with almost a zero tolerance implementation. Okay, I can't say that word today. So again, the Pfizer vaccine is and the others are not going to solve this right away, but it's a huge solution. So and then this other person asked, how do I know vaccines are safe? Now, I don't have all that information right now, but they did this study and they checked a certain amount of people, and within a certain time frame, and I don't have that information, is usually when cases or when there's adverse effects. But they went like twice as long and they checked, and it was like a 95 or 90%, whatever. It was like the best success rate of anything in the longest amount of time for the virus. So all of the studies and statistics that they looked at and reviewed for this vaccine made it extremely safe. And all of those safety precautions that they put in place were way safer than the rate that this virus is killing people. And one other thing that I just want to mention, and I wish that this would be solved, is like, just again with the misinformation, I read an article that they're trying to like bribe the firefighters with different gifts and gift cards and incentives and free memberships to places for them to take the vaccine. And again, like, why would a firefighter, a first responder, or any emergency personnel not take the vaccine unless they're reading misinformation online? And those are the people that are working very closely with the general public. And if they don't take the vaccine, they're going to continue to put other people at risk. So I think it's with all the information we have, just understanding that, yeah, this is a pandemic, we have solutions. I would confidently take the vaccine, and that's one of the main solutions that we're working towards.
Okay, I have a last questions to all of our audience, as well as to our speakers. Like, when do you think like this COVID-19 it will over? How many years or how many months it takes? I want to start from Professor Donalds, then Dr. Nichols, Dr. William, Tracy, and finally Alex.
Okay, I'll address that, but I want to answer a couple of the questions that are in the question part here, which is does an immune reaction to some common colds provide protection against COVID-19? There has been some indication that it might, since some colds are coronaviruses, there's some indication that it might make it less severe, but the research on it isn't complete, and so it would be unreasonable to make a statement about that one way or another. I also want to talk just address what Alex said and support it. There are some people who have been getting anaphylactic shock from the vaccine. Very small amount, 1 in 100,000. I don't know the exact number. But so when you get the vaccine, none of them have died because basically they treat it just like people who get bee stings. And so they keep EpiPens, epinephrine, and they just give them epinephrine and Benadryl, and they're okay.
I was going to say, or Benadryl.
Yeah, and they get usually both, and so when you get the shot, they observe you for a little while to make sure that you don't get anaphylactic shock. That happens right away, so they don't have to observe you for very long, and that's basically the main. As far as I know, that's the only real reaction that people have been getting. I also want to say the thing about it mutating. There's mutations that would make the vaccine ineffective, and then there's just mutations that just happen because there's lots and lots and lots of molecules in a strand of RNA. So we think that the mutations so far will not make the vaccine ineffective. That doesn't mean that there won't be a mutation that makes the vaccine ineffective. I also want to say that this was the fastest vaccine development ever. And I just want to say really quickly that the first vaccine for this was developed in 3 hours. 3 hours. But nobody would give it, nobody would take it. Because you have absolutely no idea if the vaccine actually works or if the vaccine is going to cause problems. So there's always a phased introduction to the way that vaccines are. First, they give it to a small number of people to see if it harms them. Then they give it to a larger number of people to see if it creates antibody response so that they can do it. And then they give it to a much larger group of people to look in the wild to see if a percentage of those people, which percentage of people give it. So they give two groups. One of them gets water, salt water, or whatever, and then the other group gets the vaccine. If the people in the group that got the vaccine have much lower rates of getting it, then we can statistically guess how effective the vaccine is. What was the question that you asked me?
Yes, when actually this COVID-19 actually it will stop and we will go to the normal life.
I kind of think that we're probably going to have to live with it. And I think that what everyone else has said is that we start needing to develop habits of being a lot more careful. I mean, I worry about the flat earth people because, you know, when they social distance, I think some of them are going to fall off the edge. But anyway, in countries like so many Asian countries, Japan, Taiwan, places like that, when you have a cold and you go out and you have flu, it's traditional to wear a mask. So you see people wearing masks all the time, just in the normal course of things. And I think that's a habit that we're probably all going to have to develop. The flu season in New Zealand was zero. Once everybody started wearing masks and washing their hands, flu didn't pass. And so wearing masks and social distancing and washing your hands and all the things that we're doing now to try and prevent the spread of COVID work for any disease. And so I think that it's something that we could do that's basic, that's going to be useful. Oh, I just got the exact information. There's been 21 cases of anaphylexia in 1,893,390 doses that have been administered. 21 cases out of basically almost 2 million. So it's very rare.
Okay.
Way under 1 out of 100,000.
Okay. Yes,
And
thank you.
yeah, we're going to live with it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nikhil. Dr. Nikhil, can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Yeah. So I agree with what the Professor Donald has said, that it's not going to go away. What I'm afraid about, though I don't want to fuel the sentiments about the conspiracy theory, but if it is a designer virus, I would not call it a man-made virus, but it's a designer virus, then we need to be even more careful. Certainly, it has shown the traits where the virus has been quite deadly. And the vaccine is not an answer. Certainly, the vaccine is not an answer. Prevention is an answer. We need to be very careful about what's going on. The world has changed. We will not be the same again. We will not travel the same again. We won't be eating the same again. We won't be collaborating the same way. So there is a new emergence that is happening. And as a human race, if we are able to understand and adapt this transition more quickly, the happier we would be. Otherwise, it's a debate. Last year, it was a debate about the coronavirus. This year, it will be a debate about vaccine. And next year, it will be more debates about jobs and economy, because people will start looking for what they actually live for. So today, they are afraid, but once this fear factor goes off, then you feel hungry. You know, so
Yeah.
so certainly, I would say there will be two types of people who will keep on worrying about the other people who will look for opportunity and do well. Let's try to be Elon Musk, try to become the richest man in the world, rather than worrying about somebody who's just about to lose the office.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Dr. William.
Okay. Listen, I think a couple of things. First, just to directly answer the question, when will it go away? This is what I want to point out for our audience and the students and our policymakers around the world. we have been throwing around, and everybody's become used to the term herd immunity. Okay, but that's really a misnomer. What we need is herd critical mass, because herd immunity means that we just get to enough people that you can have the majority of the people walking around out there in the world. But implicit in that is that you're expecting death. So you get the herd, the majority of the herd immunized, and they're fine. But that just means the minority of the herd is still going to run around out there and die off. And that's exactly, if we continue on that line of thought, that's exactly what we're seeing between the developed nations or the resource-rich nations and those nations that are less well off. Because what will happen is that first world richer nations will all get the vaccine. They will get their populations fully inoculated, much like the state of Israel is on its way to having its entire population inoculated within the next month or two. And then we've got nations which won't even see a vaccine for at least a couple of months, if not years. So what we really have to do is we have to begin to think about herd critical mass, because when we get to critical mass, then that understands that it's a process. It's going to be an ongoing process as the vaccine continues to roll out through all parts of the world. And it's an understanding that if we say critical mass, that we know that the job is not done. Now, when we get to critical mass, that's when the majority of the economies and societies around the world will begin to open up, still with protections, but open up to the extent that they can begin to function, maybe at limited levels, then progressively faster levels. So that's the kind of process that we're looking at. That absolutely coincides with this notion, twofold, that what we're facing now, and what Dr. Nichol said, is that we're looking at a logistics problem at the end of the day. We're going to have new strains coming around. This is not the virus. It's the first of its type, but it's not going to be the last of its type. And and this is just a bit of a clarification, while the virus itself, the genome was mapped in the first 3 hours. A vaccine was not produced in the first 3 hours. The genome of the virus was mapped. And now, okay, Donald, please.
I'll find the reference.
Donald, please. We're in concluding remarks. I mean, if you don't mind, that is just so rude, Donald.
Okay, no problem. Please.
Okay. The point here being that for the policymakers and the people in our audience that are out there, that we are going to have to see, that we're going to be witnessing, and we have to focus in on the delivery and the efficiency of the logistics, so that frontline workers such as Tracy are not caught in between a never land, so that she's in New Mexico this time, and then next time she's in, say, Minnesota, and each time she keeps missing the 21-day cutoff period in order for her to get a first or a second dose. I mean, it's those kinds of gaps. And that's why we have to focus in on what are the logistical things, so that we don't end up with gaps, particularly with our first line workers. The same is going to be true when we just extrapolate that and we start looking at the world population. Certainly, we're going to get to, say, the first world nations because they can do for their own, but we also have to get to the other developing countries, because even though they may be financially resource poor, they are the places that the first world nations, the developed nations, go to get all the resources to produce all the goods. So it's kind of crazy that if you think that we're just going to inoculate one part of the world and then not inoculate the other part of the world because they can't afford it, that somehow the world will get back to work. It won't. We'll end up with people in the middle of the donut hole. And that is true. So I suspect, just to finalize it in terms of definitive numbers, we're talking at least 24 months, 24, and maybe another 6 or maybe 30 months at the outset. I'd say the next 2.5 years for it to roll out throughout the world. But we first have to be thinking about it in terms of critical mass to get things started. And we should really bury the term herd immunity, because you're never going to get to herd immunity.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Sharif?
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah.
Yes, I agree that we're going to be dealing with this for some time. It may ease up a little bit in the summer. I mean, we're definitely in the thick of it in the winter months. But then people go inside. I was in Phoenix last summer, and it was out of control because everyone goes from their air-conditioned car to their air-conditioned house. And by the time we reach that critical mass with vaccines, I agree, at least a couple of years. But we're really going to just have to change how we live, how we travel. For instance, I have 2 examples just in the last few weeks of patients that traveled for the holidays. They went to California to see family. The whole family got sick, thought it was food poisoning because they got all sick at the same time. And of course, we're seeing new variations where people present with a lot more abdominal issues instead of respiratory. So this whole family thinks they have food poisoning. Half of them take the train all the way back here to New Mexico, vomiting, diarrhea, come in, they have COVID. And this one of these patients, and we have the whole family in there who came back. One of them looks at me and in all seriousness says, I don't understand how I could have the virus. I don't have any respiratory symptoms. So there's still a lot of education between masks and decreasing our travel and hand washing and how this disease or how this virus can present in symptoms. We have so much education, and there's so much distrust of those of us who are trying to educate. So I believe that that's a lot of our work right now is, and hopefully things are going in the right way politically so that we can get a consensus out there of how to handle this, because it's not going away in the next month or two just because we have viruses. Just because we have vaccines starting. We're just barely starting to deal with this. We're barely starting to learn how to treat it, but our treatments are getting better. So if people can just keep being careful, well, I should say be much more careful than we have been, and try to not spread it to your loved ones. As the vaccine continues to start to roll out, we might be okay. And there's a big part of me that has seen so much that is truly terrified by this, that's why I throw in that mind, because this is a really scary virus. I've never seen anything that kills like this. I used to see maybe 1 death a year in ICU, maybe 2 a year if it was a bad year. Talking on my shift that I personally had to help deal with the situation, maybe not my patient even particularly. We have in big hospitals, many a week, many a day. I stopped counting at my 27th death somewhere this summer that I saw personally was a part of trying to save this person. And this is traumatic. And I'm almost 50. I have a lot of coworker nurses who are in their early 20s, fresh out of school. I think that, this is something we're going to have to deal with even beyond the virus, is the fallout of everyone who's been affected in a million ways.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Mr. Alex.
Yes. Thank you, Tracy. And yeah, thank you for all the work that you're doing for all of us. I remember when I was in Ghana during the peak of Ebola, so I was in West Africa, and I remember just all these people trying to work towards solutions, and I just really respected Doctors Without Borders, and all of the doctors, nurses, paramedics were working towards saving people. Unfortunately, hundreds of them died. I think it was like 300 or 400 healthcare workers. And it was just so frustrating, again, that they were the ones that potentially saved the world. We got so lucky with Ebola that it was starting to jump from West Africa to different places around the world. It was killing people at close to a 50% rate. And with Ebola, we had the chance to do back tracing because they would show symptoms within whatever, a day or two. So we were able to, backtrace to where they are. With this virus and this pandemic has been difficult because not only of the asymptomatic cases of people not showing signs and symptoms and continuing to spread it to other people, but we also didn't have a good testing or efficient testing. And for America, that goes back to our commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, that didn't take this pandemic seriously in the very beginning. If he would have taken it seriously, we would have probably implemented testing or rapid testing or more testing widely available and accessible to more people. And then we could have slowed down a lot of potential cases. and that's a huge. So eventually, they just gave up on trying to do the back tracing because it got out of control. So again, I just want to mention Doctors Without Borders. They were on the front lines. I think they were like the main organization that helped save the world from Ebola, and people like Tracy being on the front lines. It's already spread. It's global now. That's what a pandemic is. So, I mean, it's already, you can't stop it now, but people like Tracy are slowing down cases or potential cases. So we do have more long-term solutions, and those solutions are vaccinations and continuing to adapt. Again, social distancing, washing your hands, wearing face masks, changing your daily activities, possibly changing your work career, just adapting, looking for new opportunities. So when it comes to the time, it was January. In February, I did a Facebook post, and a lot of people were upset with me. People doubted me. People said it wasn't true, it wasn't real, whatever. I said that it was going to take 2 to 5 years for us to get past this this pandemic, and I'm still pretty set on that. Again, that was in February when all this information was coming out, and that's what a pandemic is. Once it's global, you can't just slow it down. You can't stop it, even if you have vaccinations. So I don't know if I have a good answer of when we're going to solve it, because it's systemic throughout our society. I think we're going to continue to see waves like we have. We're going to continue to see waves in the winter. We're going to continue to see waves when restrictions are lifted, and eventually those waves may subside once enough vaccinations have been distributed, once we've adapted enough, once herd immunity, the small amounts of herd immunity that takes place. But again, I think this is going to be with us for a while, and it does have the ability to mutate and change. And thank you for that new information. I was unaware of, Tracy, regarding the abdominal issues. So again, education is so important. We only have so much time in the day. Do we want to spend our time playing video games or watching sports, or realize learning that the pandemic's real and we want to help keep our family and our loved ones safe? So I just want to say this is what was predicted by scientists, epidemiologists, doctors, and nurses. I mean, it's just like climate change. Like, it's not like this all of a sudden happened. Like, they knew. They, like, in January, February, I mean, and we weren't prepared. We've mentioned this in previous shows, and I'm going to say this again. I believe it was the Trump administration. Sorry. It was the Obama administration that put the pandemic office in Washington, D.C. That was to look at potential epidemics around the world and what their potential would be for a pandemic. So they were looking at Zika, H1N1, the swine flu, potential reemergence of Ebola. And when Trump took office, the Trump administration actually completely dismantled this office. They didn't feel that it was necessary, and they didn't want to direct the funds to it. So that would have potentially saved hundreds of thousands of people, and we would have been ahead of the curve. We would have had new vaccinations. And one last thing, it's just there's traveling, which we saw the spike for Thanksgiving. We're now seeing the spike from Christmas and New Year's. There's going to be a huge spike from all these Trump supporters, in LA and all over Washington, D.C. I mean, this is basic science. When you have thousands of people in close proximity to one another not wearing masks, it doesn't matter if you don't believe in the virus, the pandemic, just like it doesn't matter if you believe in climate change or not. Eventually, you're going to be affected by a major drought or a superstorm or a fire. It's like, it's basic science. And there are going to be a lot of new cases. Unfortunately, innocent people are going to die from all the Trump supporters that gathered, didn't wear masks, and went back to their state of residence to spread it to their family and friends. And
Okay.
it's sickening.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanna
Thank you.
conclude.
We actually get a very good information that we need to create more awareness. Awareness is ultimately the way of saving from this present pandemic situation. So I request all of the audience, just you wear your mask and make social distancing. Even I know that many developing nations, it's quite difficult. There are many people in the small place, and too much of economic instability and many more things happening right now. But beside that, I request everyone to maintain all of the things what our actually panelists today advise. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. For today, I want to start from Dr. Nikhil Agarwal.
I think I absolutely agree what the other speakers have also said. Uh, we more than the carefulness, I would say that we need to commit ourselves that we are now in the first week of January, so we need to be happy. The whole world, whether we agree or not, that we were sad. The pandemic will come and go. There are millions of pandemics have come and go in the last 5,000 years of our history. The human race will survive. That is a guarantee. That's something which we need to start believing in. It's an absolute miracle that we are able to produce vaccine and come to this stage within 9 months' time. You can see the share market. You can see the again the kind of which is buzz which is going on in the economy. Those things is absolutely miracle. Just to share with you, in India itself, more than 25,000 startups have registered themselves in the last 4 months. That kind of number we have never seen. I'm sure the same number will be there in the United States. That means there are more number of people who want to innovate. And the last thing which I want to say is that the scientists and health workers have gained more respect. Earlier, we used to be on the bottom of the pyramid, uh, the other people on the top, but now the politicians and the bureaucrats, everybody was on the top. But the scientists and health workers have gained the respect. And we have seen that the powerful people are so powerless. uh, the real power is with you. The real power is with the citizen of the people. And we need to believe, we need to be happy, we need to welcome 2021. And certainly, maybe in the future, Sharif will host us in Kuala Lumpur so that we can all come down there, have party.
Yes.
That's something which I want to believe in.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I know that you have lot of global conference, and definitely we arrange in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, and this year we have different plan already. We are taking different kind of initiative, and beside that, you are managing actually IIT Kanpur. It's one of the famous institute. You have affiliations with MIT, and you have many talented students. So World Talent Economy Forums, in between 2 weeks we will finish 200 of episodes, and we invite more around 200 best scientists, scholars, academicians, and the corporate people from around the world. They join in World Talent Economy Forum. They distribute their knowledge and everything with World Talent Economy Forum. So it will be great with your students. I know you are very strong ecosystem in India. You can share our content from our YouTube channel, WT Forums, and we will be really happy if any kind of academic related activities we can involve, or research related activities we can involve with IIT Kanpur, and especially with you. So hopefully you can be our mentors. Even when we arrange different kind of academies and other things, we will invite you as our mentors and our student mentors. So thank you for joining today. I'm really happy that people like you, they are actually changing India, they are changing the world, and they have a lot of contributions. So your contributions actually change the South Asia, and hopefully it will contribute a lot. And we will share this content every day. We are communicating with 10 different universities, school, college, and university in Asia Pacific. We will distribute things. We have too much of question about this COVID-19 vaccine. People are confused what's going on. But when you join, I inform many people that yes, today Dr. Nikhil Agarwal will join, and he will come up with some concluding solutions and guidelines. So thank you for joining today, and it's really great session for us. Professor Donalds, so what's your concluding remarks?
I really appreciate the other panelists, because we're all kind of converging on the same thing. I think that we've covered pretty much everything that would be a good concluding remark. And I especially agree with that this, every time there's pain, there's opportunity. So when there's disruption, that there's opportunity. Like right now, I'm doing a lot more of my classes online. I used to go around and teach people physically, but now it's possible to do. The technology has gotten better and better. So, and there's ways that it could get even better. So what he just said about the idea that there's thousands of entrepreneurs, I've said in every show that every time there's a problem, that's an opportunity. That's what businesses do. That's what entrepreneurs do. They find problems and solve them, and then they turn it into a way that they can make a living solving that problem. So I encourage people to ask the question, what's different? What are things that are going to be changing? And look at those as opportunities. Making something's fun. It's fun to build things. And one of the things that's important is to try and figure out ways that you can have more human contact, because we're getting separated from each other by this, because things like meetups, which I used to do all the time, where I go and just randomly meet interesting people, we can't do it that way. So invest in having Zoom meetings, FaceTime meetings, invest in connecting with other people, because ultimately that's what we are. Human beings are kind of a network that works together to be able to survive and thrive. And I think that it's important to understand that what we did with this vaccine was we immediately identified a sequence in the spike protein, and we used CRISPR technology to chop off a piece of that protein, and we embedded it into existing ways that we have of delivering those proteins, so that protein was, and I put a link, and you can put it in the thing. It really was 3 hours, and it took actually months to sequence it. But that, just because you have a vaccine candidate doesn't mean you can use it. You have to go through those steps that I talked about of testing to make sure it actually is effective and doesn't hurt people, which takes months and months and months. And I think that a reason for optimism is that if the virus mutates, we're going to be able to identify the mutation very, very quickly, and the sequence and the time that it's going to make to create new vaccines is going to keep continuing to shorten. We've got a whole new world of how we make vaccines. It's completely changed. And so I think that everyone needs to understand that you could potentially have COVID and not know it, and that you can go around and potentially spread COVID. There was just a paper that came out today that said that most of the transmission is because of people who are asymptomatic. So just out of kindness to other people and kindness to the world, wear masks, socially distance, wash your hands, and treat it like it's always going to be there. And that's what's important. That's what all I have to say.
Thank you, Professor Donald. We have our frontliner, Tracy. So what do you want to add for as a concluding remarks for today?
I would just, I guess, like to build on what the other participants were saying, is that this is how the world is, and it's going to be like this for a while, and something should stay. You know, we are washing our hands more. That's awesome. You know, other things we can do that I find helpful is adjusting my how careful I am depending on the environment I've been in. If I'm in an airport or at the hospital, I have a whole complete decontamination thing I do when I get home, and don't carry any of those germs into my home. If I'm just hanging out at home, I'm a little more free about touching my face and things like that. But how do we go forward? How do we learn to exist in differing, you know, Walmart's more dangerous than going for a walk in the park. Also with the socializing, we've got to learn how to move forward with, you know, we are still human beings. We're social creatures. I have had a lot of loneliness living in hotels at different hotspots away from my family. And I'm a big proponent of exercising outside. If you can be 10, 12 feet away from other people walking, so not on a crowded path. Wear masks. I tend to, really get going and huff and puff and wear masks because you can spew virus you might not even know you have. Differing ways of going forward, like with friendships, with relationships, with our health. Trying to think of any last minute tips. Oh, I'm a big fan of neti pot. If I get the slightest congestion, I use a neti pot. I think that's something we can be really happy and hopeful about, is that people are more aware of what's going on in their body. People are more health conscious. I get patients in now, and every single one of them have told me they are aware of needing to take vitamin D, and they do supplement with vitamin D. And I never would have heard that a year ago, 2 years ago. And so I think that's something we can be really hopeful about, is people are being more aware of taking care of their health, of exercise, of getting fresh air, of washing their hands, all of those good things that we need to keep building on as our new normal, really.
Thank you. Dr. William.
Okay, I just want to say ditto, and I echo, ditto, echo. But actually, Tracy, thank you. I can't tell you this. My cousin Michelle is retired, but she was first line nurse, critical care, and so your work above and beyond the COVID challenges, it's just has gone long unrewarded and unrecognized. So I just wanted to offer that. Now, what I can say is that some of the reasons that we are kind of walking in with lowered expectations so far has been because, at least, and it's true around the world as well, that there's been a distinct lack of leadership on behalf of the United States. Now, we can certainly point to the lack of leadership from the outgoing administration, and I'm just talking, say, here in America domestically, and the lack of coordination and the lack of cooperation in the initial phases of identifying the problem, working collaboratively, and then doing the things that you would expect the world to come together and do. Here is the silver lining. In less than 13 days, we will have a new administration, and we have an entirely new view of how the United States government can look and should act and does believe in. And right now, every 4 years in America, in this quadrennial cycle, we place our hopes and dreams on this new administration to deliver that which we seek, which we made our voices known through the last election. But this time, I think it's different. And I think it's not just domestically here in the United States, but really for this audience around the world, Sharif, those tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of students, the policymakers in the developing nations and the resource poor nations, that what we will begin to see, I hope, and my faith tells me,
That makes me so nervous. Being on video.
That tomorrow, well, in 13 days, that with the new administration, maybe America can begin to reclaim the moral high ground. And that once again, we'll be in a position where we will lead, with followed up by actual dollars, followed up by actual actions. And so I'm hopeful. And I have to believe in a better tomorrow. And as Dr. Nichols said, we should just be happy that we're here and with our loved ones, although we will remember the lessons of those that did not make the journey with us. So I fundamentally remain optimistic. Dr. Sharif.
Yes, thank you. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks and from Mr. Alex. Yes.
Alex.
Unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so as as Tracy was mentioning, you're right. It's not just about washing our hands and, wearing face masks. There's a lot of other things that we could do. And for instance, like when I'm in a grocery store, if I'm shopping and if I'm walking past someone that's maybe clearing their throat or whatever, I'm going to hold my breath for those, 10, 15 seconds to get past that person. There's all kinds of little things that we can do that might just save our life. So I don't know. I try my best. And of course, I only go out for essential things. And I have my small bubble or circle of friends, which is basically my roommates and where I live. And I kind of keep it at that. Now, the way the bubble works is there's all these different, bubbles and circles of friends. But if you let one person into your bubble, they're in another bubble, and then it connects to another bubble. So you do just like, you got to really focus on, you know, who your bubble is and the people that you have in your life during this pandemic until we find more solutions. So this chart right here is basically what Tracy was saying, like when she's cautious. There's different levels of danger depending on what you're doing. And there's a lot of these charts now available that were put together by medical professionals. This is one chart. It may be outdated, but I just want people to know these do exist. You get on Google, you type in COVID-19 danger chart or anything like that, and it comes up. So as you can see, flying is the most dangerous, and whatever else is in the red, sorry, I'm on my cell phone, and green would be the safest. I see someone walking their dog in a park. So just knowing what activities are more dangerous and when you should be more cautious. These are really good to analyze, to share on social media, and just to know this information. I do want to take this opportunity again to thank all the frontline workers like Tracy that are helping protect and save so many people. I'm sorry how difficult it must be seeing so much death and being surrounded by death and in such a dangerous situation, but you are valued and appreciated from all of us around the world. So there's other frontline workers. It's not just the doctors, nurses, the health workers, the first responders. There's also, like they haven't been mentioned as much, but there's also the janitors working in hospitals, the office clerks and all of that are also, you know, the security guards, everything else. So there's also all of the people in stores, that the retail stores that are helping us purchase our groceries. So I read an article recently that they're not getting treated as nicely. So remember that they're there so we can buy our groceries. As William mentioned, we got to get vaccinations out to developing countries around the world. And it's not just because it's the moral thing to do. You can look at it from the moral perspective, but also if you want to look at it from an economic perspective. We had a previous episode where we talked about supply chains. Yeah, if the supply chains, the global supply chains don't function, if a country where we get our finite resources or our products are going through extreme hardship and difficulties with increase in cases. So I did just have this note, just how many times people are mentioning it's not going to happen to me, it couldn't happen to me. I hear that all the time. I've covered so many disasters, hurricanes, where I had no idea that I'd be affected. It's like, yeah, you just lost your house in a forest fire, like you had trees like on your roof, like, or you go to a hurricane prone region and all these people are always like, I had no idea it'd be me. It's like you live in Florida on the coast. I mean, I hear this all the time, disaster relief work. Like no one's not everyone's susceptible towards these issues, and it's just good to know. Staging, stages, priorities. So there are priorities for where these vaccinations are getting distributed. Doctors, nurses, healthcare workers were some of the frontline workers, so they were getting priorities. I saw an article where some of the politicians were getting priorities, and I don't know if that, I don't, that's a whole nother subject. I do know that here where I live in Santa Cruz County of California, they did give priority to people 75 years and older. So it's cool that they're trying to find ways like who's most important, whose immune systems are the weakest, or how to allocate those correctly to help people. Something major is happening where I'm at in Santa Cruz, and you might not believe me, but the actual jail had a party around Thanksgiving. It was in all the news, like all the major news networks, and 10 people got COVID. So it's like the police officers are going to get COVID too. They all got sick, and then they're actually directly working with people. It was really embarrassing for our community that they had a party like in the jail. And if you don't believe me, just Google search it, Santa Cruz jail party COVID. So it's ridiculous. Now, some of these same police officers are now going into the homeless encampments here where there's 100 tents and 200 people living against CDC guidelines. They're taking all of their stuff, throwing it away, and kicking them out of this tent. Now, that's advised against CDC guideline, and all these people have nowhere to go. They're taking their stuff, then the officers are putting them at risk. The homeless people are putting the officers at risk. It just shouldn't be happening right now. We're in shelter in place, and we're in like some sort of California lockdown, and that shouldn't be happening. So I have right here in a question, what are some of the future strategies? I think we need another office like we had prior to when the Trump administration dismantled it. We need to create another pandemic office or whatever it was called in Washington. And another solution is I've now been tested for antibodies once to see if I've ever had it in the beginning of this pandemic. And I've now been tested for COVID twice. My last test I got back 6-7 days ago. So I think that we do need more frequent testing because there are so many asymptomatic people going around potentially spreading it to others. So more testing, rapid testing, and that's part of the solution.
Thank you for today's sessions. Thank you, Tracy, Professor Donald, Dr. Williams, and Mr. Alex for joining today's sessions. And especially I want to give thanks to the audience, those who can come up with different questions, idea. We are sharing our content with a lot of university, even in offline. Our target is 100 million people we want to reach, and hopefully with your contribution we can reach our targets. This year we are really trying to arrange conference, summit, as well as academic activities. So we need all of your support. Next week we have more interesting topic, more interesting discussions. I request all of our audience as well as speaker join next week's sessions. So thank you for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Bye-bye.